Welcome to the Grow Renaissance podcast. Let's nourish the world.
All right. Good Friday morning from wherever you are in the world. We're currently taping this on a Friday morning, 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. Welcome back to another episode of Pasture Prime Time, a Grow Renaissance podcast. Today, I'm really excited to have him join me, Matt Carstens from Solve Business Ventures. Is it Business Ventures?
Business partners, whatever you want to call it. The solve is the key.
Fantastic. So Matt and I actually met a number of months ago now. And Matt has a long history of involvement in agriculture, from a delivery of product and solutions. And I'm excited to talk about agriculture today with you. I'm excited to talk about some of the things that are happening in our world and our agri-food market space, and also really learning what Solve does, which I've really enjoyed getting to know Matt and seeing how his brain works, which is really to unclog the barriers that are there for us in agriculture. And whether you're a producer or whether you work in the messy middle, and that's everything from logistics to retails to product development, or whether that is in packaging or downstream in, why does this benefit the food manufacturing, food processing, food supply chain in general. And so, I think you'll really get to enjoy this conversation that I'm going to have with Matt in the next half hour, 45 minutes here. So stay tuned. So Matt.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for picking up my email and saying, hey, I'm super excited to jump on with you, Neil. I'd love for you to share just a little bit about your background, maybe, and then, as I usually do, tell us what's working and what isn't from your perspective in agriculture today.
Well, that might take up the whole 30, 40 minutes right there,
Perfect.
Neil. So, but yeah, I'm as you said, Matt Carstens with Solve Business Partners. We work with various different groups of customers across agriculture. It's been great to see this grow. We haven't really done any advertising of it, and it's naturally grown quite a bit. More around marketing and go-to-market strategies is where we spend a lot of our time. But there's some sales efforts, sales training, customer experience, those things that we do as well. So my background, I'm from a family farm here in Iowa, about 30 minutes from where I live here, just outside of the Des Moines area. And that's where everything kind of started for me, which was exciting to have that part of my heritage. When I was on the farm, was corn, soybeans, alfalfa. We had a beef operation, and or feeder cattle operation, I should say, and also a farrow to finish hog operation. So then went on to American Cyanamid, where I was an intern, and then in sales and market development, district manager, and so on. That transitioned over to BSF after that acquisition occurred. So I have that experience, and then went on through different stops, particularly at United Suppliers, or now Land O'Lakes, and ran their crop nutrients group. So that was a big group that did a lot of really cool things across North America and around the globe from a procurement standpoint, freight, and all the other pieces that fertilizer or globally traded commodity gets to deal with. And then also ran their sustainability piece, particularly at Land O'Lakes, which now is Truterra. And we were the original group that helped get that up and going, and actually started back at United and carried over to the Land O'Lakes side. So that was a fun part of my career that I never thought I would do, but one that I felt was necessary and good to have. And then it went on to Landis, which is a cooperative here in Iowa, and had a stint with them, and now with Solve Business Partners. So in Landis, it was grain, agronomy, soy processing, and various other things that were there for the farmers. So that's a little bit of mine. At United, I got to spend time in Canada, helping bring that group into the Canadian market. Knew quite a few folks up there that were just amazing and really pioneers in helping change the crop nutrients landscape up there at that time. And that group maybe never will get credit for what they did, but they did some amazing things. And I was fortunate enough with United Suppliers and Crop Nutrients Group to be a part of that. So there's my Canadian plug. as well. So I've got a bunch of folks up there that I loved spending time with, and literally they were pioneers in doing things that today still benefit that market up there.
Yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. And it's funny how small our industry is, Matt. We probably crossed paths and not even known it. I've spent a lot of time with the United Suppliers team and know them. Obviously, Saskatchewan agriculture is very small at the end of the day, um, and whether it was on crop nutrition or crop protection, crop inputs in general, there's certain groups that change the way that conversations happen. So I think you got that spot on. United did a lot of interesting things that are still very rooted in how we think about well, the whole input side, but really the protection of soils and crops today. I'm curious from an agronomy standpoint, and you brought this up. I was just at the Ottawa Valley Trade Show, which is equipment and agronomy is sort of slammed together in under one roof.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of talk today around uh, how we minimize nitrogen or manage nitrogen, I think is probably a better
Mhm.
term to use. Um, in your journeys and through the agronomy, how have you seen that evolve over time? There's a lot of different thoughts, but I'm curious on your thoughts on some of that.
Well, I think there's a couple pieces on the agronomy when you think about that piece that actually could you know maybe use some of its own insets that are in agronomy. But the first comes to mind, if you look at the stress that farmers are in today, and it varies across North America what the economic conditions of farmers are. But today, overall, it's definitely not in a great spot. And we need to, and I encourage your farmer audience. I the farmer has got to rise up and have their voice heard. A model that's a three-step distribution model does not work. And you can try to merge two of them together and make them look like one. But one of the biggest competitors on the fertilizer side goes from the mine to the farm. So, when fertilizer, there's the table stake. So, two step is a little out of date or too expensive, let alone a three-step model. And, we spend a ton of time trying to market the strategies or go to market strategies around three-step, even some four-step. And it's time for that to end. And I think the farmer has to have their voice heard. They need to understand what that means and what it's costing them, and really put their voice out there. That piece has to change for profitability, for better marketing, messaging, understanding, control, everything that comes with it. On the
Okay.
side that I think is working is, as we see more AI enter the market, I think you're going to see better responses to farmers. Back when you and I were kind of starting our careers, the agronomist was a real deal. Back in my early years, that's when the certified agronomists and all the things started coming out. I remember the days where with the seed agronomist came out from the seed company you were working with. That was a big deal to the farm,
Yeah.
and being able to see that agronomist, have them give their analysis of what your crops look like, in that supporting that local dealer. It's a big deal,
Yeah.
and that day's gone.
Yeah.
I mean, do we still have agronomists coming out of universities? Absolutely, but that's not near what it used to be or what it needs to be from a volume today. So we're going to have to tap into things like AI to get more immediate responses, a greater depth of analysis to that farmer to understand. I had a farmer about a month ago tell me, here in Iowa, where they had disease in the field, not one person came to tell them or talk to them about it. They had to find it, they had to go research it, they had to go get the answers. And that's just that day is I guess where we're at. And we've got to arm the farmer with better solutions to be more educated and have those resources at a moment's notice at their fingertips. So a good thing that's happening that I think addresses some challenges that slowly occurred over time. And the other one is one that I think needs addressed and is not getting addressed quick enough, to really help the farmer and help agriculture. Job losses and things when you take links out of supply chain do suck, but at the end, this isn't about jobs. This is about farmers and feeding and fueling and clothing the world. And there is an obligation that our farmers have, and we as agribusiness have to take that serious. And I think our farmers need to have a stronger voice there.
I love everything you said. It certainly speaks to, the synergies, cut from the same cloth in terms of the end goal of what we're trying to do. And, from a
Yeah.
technology standpoint, Grow is here not only to bring technology, but to protect that technology, so as we empower farmers to have a larger voice, they can have some of that data that has otherwise been turned around and used against them more protected. So their voice can be amplified and they can feel more confident in that. And so I love everything you said. Um, so solve removes barriers for agribusinesses. You've got a go to market strategy, um, and you recently just brought on a firm that you were sharing with me. I'd love for you to talk about it. Crop Tabs, because in your conversation there, in terms of how do we minimize the intermediaries that don't need to be there between field and sorry, manufacturing and
Mhm.
farmer. You've come across a solution and you are representing them as you bring that to the market space. But it's so fascinating because to me it changes the way that we're actually going to be able to access this product all around that nutrient component, feeding the soils and feeding the crops more effectively with things that are needed.
Yeah, that's so well said. And, I want to go back on what you said with grow. And I think it's something that your audience is hopefully understanding. That the solutions like grow are going to come from different angles than the farmers used to, than what our grandparents, parents had. Ours will be different, and it's not the local business, whatever that is, a seed dealer or retailer or whatever. Those will still be there, but there's other avenues now that are actually moving the mark with innovation and technology. And I think Grow is a really good example of that, where our farmers have to open their minds a little bit and take in additional resources that aren't from the traditional side. And I think that's going to be a big help as we look to the future and trying to pull on resources like Grow. Another piece that we work on together is the whole CSD, calcium sulfite dihydrate, and the things that are going on in the space of that, or what's also sometimes called gypsum on a lower quality type of product. All things that are in some cases new to farmers, but have huge benefits.
Yeah.
So as we've reached back in the toolboxes for dicamba or 2,4-D or even Roundup many years ago, we're re-equating that to in crop use through trait selection. Same thing is happening, I think, with things like fertilizer.
Yeah.
And then you've got the off the chart movement to things like farm minerals and crop tabs that are out there that really truly revolutionize and evolve what fertility is going to be, where there will be a day, hopefully, God willing, in our lifetime, Neil, that we're going to see farmers using a little tab to fertilize, 25, 50 acres of N, P, and K, eliminating a lot of that channel to the farmer, eliminating the need for big storage, high transportation costs. Think about if we had a little tab that did nitrogen, a little tab that did phosphorus, a little tab that did potash, how that would affect today with all that's going on with the war in Iran, the strait and canals that are all problematic, the logistic challenges, the cost of big bulky storage.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's major players in the industry that don't want to hear this, but for the farmers, it's coming.
Yeah.
But the key to this, like helping take steps out of the distribution channel or supply chain channel, we have to have the farmers open their minds and think of it that this is not our grandparents' farming operation. It's not our great grandparents' agribusiness anymore. Things are changing. People are focused on ag. People have done things in other industries, like the case of farm tabs and what it could mean towards and what they're working on ultimately with space travel, and bringing it back into ag to make big impacts. And that's exciting, but we have to keep our minds open, and that's agribusiness and farmers. That it's not going to be the same. We can fight it, we can spend millions, hundreds of millions trying to keep it that way,
Yeah.
but in the end, It's going to change. It has to change as you look at things that have happened outside of agriculture in the way of, look at what Amazon did and then look at what DoorDash did to Amazon. And all these things are happening, and we've got to respect that and get a clear, more open mind to what the future can be. And that we may have spent hundreds of billions of dollars on fertilizer assets, but the problem is that that's nearing its end as you look at some of these other products that are coming out, and some of the old standbys like gypsum or CSD, and things like farm minerals and crop tab.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And so when Matt says crop tab, think of a bath bomb. You've got
Yeah.
that little, you throw
Yep.
it in, and it's basically what this product that he's talking about. And I'm excited, to give it a whirl. You sent me a sample, and this spring I'm keen up to, see what that does. But I really like how you phrase that in terms of this isn't the farm that we grew up with, and I'm one that leans probably more on the side of more holistic management. I don't like the labels, but how do we, continue to leave our ecological system better than we found it, and yet still raise or grow good, food and products that come off of our farms. But we can't forget about the science that got us here. And so there's always this sort of like juxtaposing that happens between those that are like, we don't need NPK, and then those that are into the science of down the rabbit hole in the science, and we can overcomplicate something that doesn't need to be overcomplicated. But I think and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, some of the old guard is we are trying to farm like we were 20 years ago, and it's not happening because we've changed the dynamics of our soil profiles, the environment's changed, our supply chain, yes, it's changed, but our adaptation of science and our better technologies that come along with that have allowed us to progress, where we can get down to a tab, that potentially is going to go into a tank. That changes the amount of handling we have, the amount of equipment that we don't need anymore, in terms of offloading, loading, storage, all these components that took up infrastructure and resources, and now our dollars can go towards different applications that are really going to revitalize. I don't think we can forget about the science. That's we're too far gone in terms of the gentrification and the desertification and the volatilization that happens, and the water issues that we're seeing. And so we just need to understand how the science can be tweaked and modified so that we can continue to grow and service an ever-growing demand, from the food and textile industry, manufacturing to a degree. I mean, people don't recognize that rubber is an actual plant. We grow it, we process it, and that industry is scary in terms of the depletion of rubber farmers that are out there. And if we don't have rubber, we don't have transportation.
You said it, and you said it better than I did, and that's really what we've got to get our farmers comfortable with is science.
Right.
Whether we're talking old products like gypsum or CSD to new technologies like crop tab, it's science.
Mm-hmm.
When you apply nitrogen that you can safely apply directly to the plant, that's a 5 to 6 times uptake than applying it in the soil.
Right.
When you use something like carbon dots that takes that fertilizer right directly into the plant more efficiently, more effectively, that's science. When you use biologicals, that's science.
Yeah.
And so what we did, which was very science like 40, 50, 60 years ago with Harbor Bosch and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But we've had 40, 50, 60 years to improve, and we fought it. Ag put up a really hard fight, Neil. I'm proud of us for spending a lot of money fighting technology and innovation. And there's no doubt we've done good things in that as well. But what's on the horizon is way greater. It's going to be way faster than what we've experienced. And it is all about science. And that makes it hard. Like so many people ask, so how many pounds of nitrogen are in a tab?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not the question. It's what can this tab do in the field using the plant, the soil, the environment, science that makes it better. And when you lose none to the environment, think about what that means. When you apply directly to the plant, think what that means. When you use carbon dots, think what that means. And this is all science that blows people's mind. But we we've done this before with biotechnology and other things in ag, and it's here now in the form of fertilizer and I think you're going to see some interesting things on the crop protection side real
Hmm.
soon. I can't talk about that, but I think we're a few months away from having something really interesting on that front as well.
Hmm.
So I'll just tease that out that it's going to be faster than ever before. And the key, if I'm a farmer and open-minded agribusiness, and
Hmm.
that's not a lot, but there is some out there that open-minded. It's about the science and
Yeah.
having to really understand science and what role AI can play in helping us paint that picture throughout the supply chain, from the farmer to the consumer.
Yeah. I love it. Well said. And so, as it relates to Solve, if we had agribusinesses that were listening to this conversation that we're having, Matt, um, maybe you can talk a little bit about what Solve does and how you remove roadblocks and help support the integration into the market space.
Yeah, it's really helping companies that are newer or ready to take the next turn where they've seen the science, they've seen success of companies like Grow, they've
Hmm.
seen these things coming out, and they're looking further ahead than what some organizations are, and want to take those steps that are complicated but doable with the right guidance and encouragement. And that's really as much of what Solve does. And the marketing side, as agriculture, we aren't the industry that's probably well known for marketing, but marketing can be a big player as we think about omni-channel, digital marketing, and geofencing, and all the things that can be done there that makes any path that you want to take to the farm or back then to the consumer possible. And with AI, it even gets easier. So,
Yeah.
Solve is really on the cutting edge of that, and working with companies that want to take that path of maybe more resistance right now, but they see what it looks like 3, 5, 7 years from now, and they know they've got to get there, as that pain of waiting is really painful. And
Yeah.
agriculture is going to lead that change. I really believe it, as people understand the science, the innovation, the technology, and companies like Grow can help be leaders in that. It will take care of itself.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the farmer will get it right. It just sometimes takes longer than it should, but marketing can speed that along.
You're absolutely right. And really, I think what you're saying is Solve removes roadblocks, increases visibility and awareness, and you just help guide the ship through those pathways, as it were. Um, Using a nautical term, I guess we have our farmers and fishers that are part of the larger agriculture system, but I always pinch myself when I talk nautical terms in agriculture. The the other really neat thing that I think that you've mentioned several times is this whole component of removing the stepping stones, and whether that's upstream of the producer or downstream of the producer. But specifically upstream, where I see a lot of us going in terms of understanding the science and understanding, the products that we're going to continue to need in our farming attributes, and that may look very different in 5 years than it does today. Um, but we're going to see more farm agents, right? Farmers are going to have a more powerful voice, but there's this old guard of, and I don't want to be discrediting to retails, but the knowledge base is going to shift to be more on farm, and so products are going to be located more on farm, so that we reduce some of that clutter and the noise and that mm, unnecessary messy middle that's there. At the end of the day, again, and you mentioned this earlier, it's putting a few more dollars in the bottom line. I always talk about diversification of the balance sheet because I never, savings is opaque, because you can reinvest. There's different ways, but if we can diversify the balance sheet because we've created more on-farm capability, I think it also enhances the opportunity with technology. So, the young generation that is looking at farming operation today, AI being a big example, like what can we do on farm with technology where we're not having to leave? And it's a changing world. Like I speak to a lot of young farmers, they don't want to have to go to their equipment. The socialization has changed, right? They can do
Right.
more like this, and so they don't want to go to the retail, go out for coffee, and talk about the weather and what's happening in your field to the equipment dealer. Like they want to just stay on their farm and be able to use technology to their benefit, because that need for socialization has changed. For you and I, it may still feel very normal to walk in and create community and create that opportunity, but the younger generation finds community and finds fulfillment in a different way, and technology is a large part of that. So
I,
I'd love your thoughts on any of that.
well, I think you're exactly right. I can't really add anything. I do want to say, and I know you agree with this too. I think everyone that's in the supply chain has a role, but you've got to find that role. And I assure you, it's different than yesterday.
Right.
And if you want to try to block your eyes out to it because the money you're making is too great, you will be one of those we can go in the history books and read about that used to be here that aren't anymore. That's what's going to happen. So I think everyone's got to be from the agribusiness side assessing what is their role. And although change will be hard, you've got to be able to take it before it takes you, right? The old Jack Welch statement, rate of change outside your company is greater than within, the end is near. There's a lot of folks staring at that. I mean, look at what we're seeing with some of these bigger companies already right now.
Yeah.
And this has just begun. I think at the farmer level, it's about demanding what's right for their farm. Whether that is still using the supply chain that's in place, there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe we need less of it, but less of those. But that the farmer gets to decide. But we have to remember, as we see with the consumer on goods to the household, this is going to a more direct model. There may be things like DoorDash that utilize the current structure, but makes it.
Yeah.
We've got to find that. And if the farmer doesn't let their voice be heard, that will be a shame, because then you're letting people decide that maybe aren't very familiar with the farm, or like me, were back at the farm, 30 years ago. Well, there's a lot that's changed since then, right? So that farmer's voice matters, and we've been to these conferences. Neil, you said you're just that way. How many farmers are actually there? We got World Agritech going on next week, and I think San Francisco, if I remember right. How many farmers are going to be there? It'll be less than 5%.
Yeah.
Yet they're all there to talk about what the farmer needs.
Yeah.
I can't connect those dots for you. And I'd say less than 5% is probably less than 2% that will be farmers. I have no idea. And I think that's a great event. But how do we really elevate that farmer's voice and the expertise? And it's not somebody representing them, it's their voice that matters. Them being able, there's plenty of associations from the beef side, pork, or just livestock in general, to the cropping side. There's a lot of industry associations. Are they ready to step up to this challenge, let that voice be heard, not fearful of what agribusiness can do to them, but more so what they have to do for those paying their bills, which are the farmers. So it's going to be an interesting, complicated turn, and everybody's paid correctly to say what they think is best for based on what they're doing today and what their best path forward is financially. But the farmer's going to get this right. That's the warning that I think you and I give. The farmer will get this right. I can't promise if that's a year from now or 10 years from now, but they will. Where do you stand when they get that right? And if you don't know what getting it right means, look at other industries, look at what's going on with the consumer, and with changes in products and use rates and sustainability, these same things will apply to the farmer, especially as the next generation comes into that operation. I know on our family farm, the next generation's there, and they're absolutely changing what they do and how they do it. And that's happening in a lot of places, not everywhere, but in agribusiness, where do you really stand? What is your real role as you look at 2, 3, 5 years down the road? It's hard. It won't be easy, but those that are willing to make those changes will reap those benefits long term. And you're seeing it already. Big names falling to the wayside, and big names trying to do things differently to save their current structure. That doesn't count. You've got to disrupt that structure in favor of the farmer, and there'll be ones that will make those right moves, and it'll be exciting to see them lead that change with the farmer's voice in the forefront.
It's really well said, Matt, and I really like all of that. Um, I know we're going to have a bit of a shorter conversation today, just because of our Friday time commitments, and we got things going on here. Um, but I'm wondering if you had, I mean, your thoughts. The farmer will get it right. I think that's an underpinning that probably is going to be the title of this podcast. The farmer will get it right. But if you had something to leave for our audience, a takeaway could be about Solve. You've got a little bit of a podium to talk about some of the things, where they can find you. Agribusinesses or anyone in agriculture really that thought they might want to pick Matt's brain about how Solve can support them. I'd love to give you an opportunity to share about that, but leave the audience with a thought or a takeaway from your perspective about agriculture today.
Yeah, they can find Solve. They can Google it or ChatGPT it. It'll guide them to the right place. I won't try to leave some fancy whatever. They can. I know they'll be able to find it.
Great.
But the takeaway I would leave is that change is hard. And what I've learned in my time is everybody says they want change,
Mm,
but the truth is it's a really small percentage that actually want it.
mm,
So we know that we all inside fear change,
right.
and that's okay. So now you have to think about it from the standpoint then of what is really going to happen for the customer in agriculture we're all here for, which is the farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And their backs are against the wall. Farm sales are up as high as they've been since, maybe all the way back to some of the 80s in certain states, certain provinces. So we've got to think differently. And change is uncomfortable, change is hard, but this isn't about if it's hard or easy. This is about the farmer
Yeah.
and what is necessary to fuel food, to feed, fuel, and clothe the world. And we have that obligation and we've got to do it. And I think about things that are even harder than these topics, like corn exports. I see that struggle here in the United States.
Yeah.
And when China went a different direction to South America on both corn and soy, it's hard getting it back. And I would argue I'm not sure we're ever going to get that back. So what do we do with the corn that we are producing and will produce more of in the future? Do we have to change crops? Do we have to find new markets, new things like ethanol? 45Z, I think, is a key driver of this. So everyone's got to get their voice heard. And these industry associations sit in a very critical spot to help bring everyone together and rally that voice clearly in a way that the consumer, the government, supply chain to the consumer all can understand and hear more loudly and clearly than ever before. So that it's a lot, I know, Neil, but I think it's just really at that state that we've got to be very diligent here and not afraid of change and not listening to clickbait topics that aren't really relevant. It's what's really necessary and who can help drive this change. And there's a lot of folks that I think can, companies, industry associations, and individuals that can be a part of this when given the chance.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's also part of that change process is, I think agriculture has gotten so large sometimes that it seems, unfathomable about how we can actually fix things. And I often say to producers, let's just think very locally. Like
Yeah.
if you can take care of your friends and family and neighbors and start thinking differently about your operations, the domino pieces will start to lay out the way that they should as we start to all maneuver, right? Um, and the market spaces are gonna be pushed. Corn's a great example. There's changes already happening. I look at corn, and if you go all the way back in the history of corn, you take it back to the Aztecs, and even in the Latin countries, they revered corn. It was part of their like diet, and it was a specialty, and it was something that really made them powerful and stand out. Maize, um, and we've taken it all the way to 180 degrees the other direction, right? And so there's this opportunity for us to maybe even just bring the dial back a little bit and sort of revisit what these crops mean to us, not what commodities that they can service. And that really changes the way that we can start supporting our neighbors. And so hyper localization before global expansion. And I think that's sort of playing off of what you're saying, which is change is hard. And I think that introspective look is something that we need to focus on.
I think what you said was right, and I'd phrase it in a real simple way: think globally, but act locally.
Yeah.
And if we do that, we'll win. Think about the globe as a whole, and think about what, how many people have really been to Iran or seen the issues there. That's almost none.
Yeah.
So we have to think globally, but bring that back and do what we need to do locally to make that happen. And that'll win more days than we'll lose on that thought process, I think.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Matt, I really appreciate you jumping on a Friday, a busy Friday, and having this chat with me. I look forward to having more in the future here as Solve continues to bring some neat technology and opportunities to the market space. Curious to hear about the breadcrumbs that you were laying there. But also, if you haven't heard Matt talk about that crop tab, certainly reach out or Google that. It's pretty neat, the crop minerals. I think these solutions are worth exploring and doing your own homework, DYOR, do your own homework. But then ask the questions, how does this fit into my operations? So Solve Business Partners or Solve Business Ventures, as I just recoined it,
Love
I
it.
think they'd be very key to to follow along as they continue to do what we're doing, shaking the pot a little bit and stirring the pot, shaking the bush. You can tell it's a Friday. All in the effort that we can nourish our planet, our friends and family, so the people and the animals that live within it. So thank you very much for listening. Thanks again, Matt, for being here. We'll catch you on the next episode of Pasture Prime Time.